Hello and welcome from sunny Northern California. My name is Julie Moore, and today I'm going to be speaking with you about the future of the internal service provider. Now, this particular presentation is not really focused on predicting the future, rather looking at some of the trends that are currently happening within the IT industry, things that are being adopted by our customers that are forcing the internal service provider to really begin looking at how we can adopt and modify what we do internally to better align what we provide with the business. First up, a little bit about myself. I am actually the principal research analyst and author at blueprintouts.com. I have had the pleasure of, over the last 10 years, actually running my own business and speaking around the world at different various events. I also am part of the Vice President of Membership here at the local league in Sacramento, as well as on the board at the HDI chapter here. I do have a background in computer science. I'm an ITIL expert within V2 Manager, V3 expert, as well as COBIT, and I have the CGIT certification for IT governance. I've been in IT for quite a while. I've worked in a variety of different kind of vertical markets, everything from higher education to government to science, financial management, as well as working within the consulting realm for many years. So what I'm bringing to you today comes from, my view of IT over the last 25 years and what I see happening today in the industry that I think is incredibly challenging for IT organizations to really kind of stick up with the pace of the way in which technology changes and the rapid adoption that we have within the customer realm. So we're going to look at some of the trends and predictions, and these are coming from a variety of sources within the industry, and then kind of looking at the way that this is going to impact the way that the service provider positions themselves within the business. Then looking at social networking and how this changes the way that IT interfaces with their customers, looking at the integration and why this is necessary, that we begin working more part of the business versus working side by side, and then looking at the way that knowledge is dramatically changed over the last year or so with the adoption of so many technologies that are web-based, that are community-owned. We're kind of left challenged internally to IT on the best way that we can manage our internal knowledge. And with that comes the idea that, we should be able to leverage that knowledge to create a much higher level awareness of how IT can better support the business and where they're going through the business and analytics. And then we're going to kind of look at the new skills that are required at that primary point of contact with customers. It used to be that, this was the service desk being the primary point of contact. We wanted people to be able to answer the phone and have great customer skills. And now we're seeing the advancement of the need to understand the business more versus the technical knowledge that we've kind of prided to have there at that service desk. And then the wave of mobile computing is, we've got some startling statistics around that. And we don't see this, obviously, changing anytime soon. But it does change the dynamics of how the service provider, is looking at risk within the workplace and how we can better manage that. And last but not least, of course, living here in California, we have such a focus on green, and green computing is not very far behind that. And we'll look at the way in which we can distinguish ourselves as a service provider by being an early adopter of green computing. So I'm going to read to you just a little bit about some of these trends. I'm not going to read them word by word, but just kind of pick out some of the things that I think are very important. We've heard about Web 2.0 and the ability to begin creating these communities, blogs, wikis. And while the customers may not be able to really understand what is Web 2.0, they're certainly enjoying the benefits. I mean, we're seeing a lot more adoption of social networking sites, the use of Google, the use of Wikipedia, the ways in which customers are using the Internet within their industry is just dramatically increasing. Now, the bottom line here is that our consumers within the business enterprise are really getting a great taste of the future, in which the way in which they interface with an IT organization is going to be through some of these new channels that may or may not exist today, these communities or blogs or wikis, and that we'll be able to resolve issues for customers without actually having to do the phone call or other ways in which we do today with the assisted support. So, if this is true, if we see customers adopting these technologies as part of using technology as a consumer in their homes, it lends itself to the discussion of what are we going to do internally within IT to leverage these concepts in order to continue to focus our customers on leveraging these technologies within the workplace. There's a lot of efficiencies to be gained by getting them to adopt it within the workplace as well. Now, this one to me is very startling, and it goes hand in hand with the need for us to kind of evolve very quickly. And this comes from a benchmark study. They have kind of put some predictions in here about multi-vendor support. Now, let me define that first. We're really looking at the way in which we're leveraging different technologies, different platforms, different vendors, and being able to very quickly diagnose the root cause of what could be potentially causing an issue. It used to be fairly simple. We would take a look at what we've developed internally, we'd do the diagnostics, and we could, for the most part, come up with a fairly rapid solution. But you'll look at this, the volume has increased 30% on average that requires us to have expertise of information about products from other vendors, so not specific to our own area. At the same time, when we begin resolving these issues, on average they take 4 times longer. That's a significant increase in the amount of time that it takes us to solve an issue. Now, how that impacts the service desk or people that are providing support of services is now we see an increase in the amount of training that it takes in order for people to become knowledgeable enough to support these multi-vendor type of issues that are now kind of impacting our environments. So the more we integrate, the more difficult it is to solve these issues. The complexity of networks continues, the infrastructure continues to grow, and ultimately, because it's taking us longer to resolve these issues, it's definitely impacting the customer satisfaction. So this came from a study from CIO Insight, and it was quite interesting. I was giving this presentation in Australia, and this email came up about an hour before I went in to do the presentation. And I really liked what this message was from CIO Insight. Fewer than 25% of employees will remain in IT. I have 3 sons, all of the 25, 18-year-old type range, that grew up with technology attached to the end of their arms and hands and fingers and everything else. And I can tell you that very early on, one of my sons was very interested in a career in IT. But very quickly, he decided that that was kind of like the blue-collar job, like my father who worked for GM, right, a factory worker. It was no longer viewed as a valuable position as if people would value you in IT. It became much more of a commodity type of worker. And so, this prediction isn't that far from the truth if I look at my own family and the way that people view IT today. It's no longer the glamorous job that it was when I was going to college. It was a job that you got a great benefits package. You were very much coveted by the business. So this is a very interesting turn of events here, and we see this all over. Enrollment in IT programs in higher education has been dramatically decreasing. So, that trend is an interesting, and it's going to put us in a bind. Many IT activities are now dissolving into the business units, and I think this is predominantly because the end users are becoming so much more intelligent about the way that technology is used and how they can support it themselves. Everyone is becoming a knowledge worker. We're really in the knowledge, instead of being in the industrial area, we're now in the knowledge marketplace. And so what we do is we're exchanging information between a colossal number of individuals on a daily basis, working between businesses to business, customer to business. So this exchange of knowledge, what we know, is our primary asset that we bring into the workforce. Now, the next one, mobile devices are driving exponential increases in data volume, and we see this, and you're going to see a chart later on in the presentation that really shows you how much data is gaining ground, especially within the mobile devices, where we see so much more traffic is now increasing within the data realm versus the voice realm. Now, the way in which customers learn about businesses and companies has also been changing fundamentally. I mean, the explosion of Twitter, of Facebook, and the way that these are being used as marketing vehicles for businesses, we're no longer comfortable sitting back and, having someone call us. If we want to know something about a company, we go out, we find out about them on the Internet. We can subscribe to, any form of information where we can, get information from the vendors that we selectively choose through the methods that we want. And it's a very different dynamic interface with these businesses. And we're going to see how that's kind of changing in a couple slides. More employees now today understand how to exploit technology. There isn't an error code that you can come up with that when you type it into Google, you can't find some sort of an answer. Now, whether or not you have the knowledge or skills or capabilities to do something with that answer is another thing. But we're developing stronger technical knowledge as a community. It's making it much more difficult for us to support employees in the workplace. We're really moving towards technology as a service, and I think that's another great idea, this idea that technology is no longer, us, we're knowledgeable, we provide this stuff to you, you should be very happy for that. Now it's a commodity. It's something that we can just simply buy like we buy dry cleaning. The whole cloud computing and the way that we're virtualizing the IT organization. And this has a dangerous kind of a risk factor for many businesses, but think of how threatening it is to the service provider. And we also see this continued increase in business process outsourcing. So no longer is it a common process that most organizations use, but these are business-specific, vertical-specific types of processes that are now being outsourced as the cost for doing so and the risk is better managed, and these companies develop the specialization to provide those services. So how does this impact us from a service provider realm? The primary way in which our users have kind of interacted with us has dramatically changed. I mean, it used to be we had call centers that we built. They were predominantly for industries such as the telephony industry, where you were calling in for customer service, fulfillment, short duration, and that's where we saw the beginning of a hub of a way to interact with an organization. Now, IT, as we started to begin to provide more technical services, we kind of said, you know what, we would rather push people out into the distributed business units, and that's the way that we can provide value. Well, it became a very costly model to sustain over a period of time, because the more and more technology that we adopted, the more difficult it became for us to keep that subject matter expertise maintained within the distributed silos. So back in the late 1990s, we had this big push to build single points of contact, kind of looking back at the call center realm and saying, ooh, this might make sense for IT. So now we're focused on technical support, on incident management, and we're beginning to see this whole view of managed service in the introduction of these suites of tools to help us manage the process more effectively, the telephony systems integrating with the incident management systems. Now, in the early 2000s, what we saw was a majority of influence coming from the ITIL framework, this idea of converting the help desk into this service desk, where instead of the focus being solely on incident management, we can focus on helping the service management organization to be much more successful by looking at all the processes within something like the ITIL framework. So now we're beginning to see the value contribution through this single point of contact, where we have greater skill sets, an integrated service management tool suite with the back end. So you kind of see this. We started at a hub. IT pushed it into the market, into the distributed environment. Then we went to the single point of contact. Then we kind of made that single point of contact be on steroids. Well, what we see now is what we're viewing in the industry and the way that customers are adopting technology. We kind of have to move that service provider back into the business units. And I'm not saying that we physically take that service desk and distribute them back out into the business work units. But what we see is that integration is forcing us to know much more about the business processes. And so that single point of contact that we've been relying on to kind of eliminate things from coming into IT is now going to be focused on gathering information about what is occurring in the business units and bringing it back into IT so that we can better align what it is that we're providing for the business and creating much stronger, much better, more significant, more valuable customer experiences as our customers are using IT services. Now, the way in which we're interacting with the business unit is changing as well. In addition to having that single point of contact, bringing in all of these Web 2.0 type technologies that we're talking about and leveraging the consumer's appetite right now for social networking, we can see a variety of different channels in which we can capture information about the way that our customers are using our services in order to improve them and create greater value than we ever could before. Now, I'll give you a great example of this. In higher education, they have a product called Blackboard, and it's predominantly been used for distance learning. And, there are institutions out there that have begun developing social network ability into Blackboard. And instead of moderating these discussion forums and trying to, really kind of control the social networking, they're beginning to just turn it loose. And what they're finding is that teachers are communicating with teachers about how to successfully use these technologies in the classroom, things that the IT organization just can't simply answer. I mean, they're good at IT, but they're not necessarily, instructors in the classroom. And so we're basically then capturing within those discussion forums unique ways in which the instructors are using this technology so that we can go back and improve the product set in order to enhance and continue to enable them to be much more successful within their business processes. So the way that we're interacting and the way that we're capturing information is dramatically changing, and we need to make certain that we are paying attention to that information flow and capturing the information and using it to our advantage. So social networking has really kind of just changed everything in our society today. We've moved from this idea of a standard platform to the idea that everywhere we go, we get what we want. This idea of having a menu and getting exactly what we want, right size for what we want, the customization is really, kind of taken IT. It's very difficult to customize. We want standardization in order to minimize risk, but yet in the social networking environment, customers are used to getting what they want. We've moved from a transaction basis into this continual exchange of information in the social networking realm. And so if I come from that in my social environment, in my home environment, and in my community environment, I'm going to expect that I'm no longer going to be a transaction with IT, that there should be this continual exchange of information, that I should be learning from IT, and IT should be learning from me. And that's a common expectation. It's not like it's there today. Consumers are no longer comfortable with being an audience to anything. Everybody wants to participate. I remember when the sitcom 30-something came out, and I said, who in the world will ever watch this? It's like watching a TV show about my life. Little did I know that reality TV was right around the corner and that everybody would be so focused on interacting with other people's lives. And yet it's the way that we interact today. There doesn't seem to be a lot of privacy. I'm not happy just getting information with you. I want to be part of that. We have the whole iReport on CNN, and you'll see people's text messages and emails coming up along the bottom of the news screen, giving their point of view, like I care, right? So the way in which our consumers are wanting to interface, we move from give me the message to let's have a dialogue. from you're influencing the way that I'm using technology, and I want to have a relationship with you that's much more conducive from us learning from each other as I'm using the technology. And so this is something that our younger workers, it's the way of life. They have no interest in moving back to this other model where there's standardization and structure and everything else. They balk at it. So this is not something that's going to happen. It's already happened, and yet IT organizations are really struggling to figure out how to leverage this. You have some companies that completely lock down any social networking, thinking that tight controls are somehow going to manage it. You know, people are on their cell phones and iPhones and everything else. It's a very interesting dynamic within the environment. It introduced a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of opportunity for an IT organization to really reinvent itself. So here's a great kind of a graphic that demonstrates this. You see these cycles of technology and social change that have happened over, my lifetime. I went from an Apple IIe, now I've got my computer is more powerful on my phone than it was on the computer that I had years ago. And so we see the way in which this has, the social change and technology changes have now come to this point where it's really about social computing. And to be honest with you, this is possible because of the advancement in technology. 3 years ago wasn't possible. So this rapid pace of technology change is what's really forced us to kind of adopt and change the way in which we leverage technology within our social lives. And this graphic also shows this, kind of the dynamic difference between the way that we interact with our media. It used to be it was TV, film, and radio, and print. Now it's podcasts and wikis and microblogs, and that doesn't even begin to look at YouTube. And so we look at moving from this observation, this controlled distribution of what we get, is what the media outlets wanted to give us, to now we're actually part of it, and we're exchanging it. People are taking videos and pictures and stuff, and people are finding out about news and kind of circumventing the traditional media outlets. And so it's much more now into the consumer's control than it's ever been within the institutional control. And you see this. There's a lot of newspapers that are drying up and going away. No one's buying newsprint anymore, and you can see that impact within that industry pretty significantly these days. So this creates a need for policy. Clearly, we cannot just say, bring social networking into the work environment. There's just so much risk associated with that. But on one side, organizations are using social networking, and they're doing it well. And I think there's a lot of case studies out there that would provide great guidance on ways in which you can use this. I'll go back to higher education for an example. In one of the classes I was teaching on knowledge management, I had a young student that came in and said they were using Facebook now to connect with students. And she was walking through the adoption of this technology, and she basically said at the beginning, the students were like, "Are you kidding me? This is where I connect with my friends. I have no interest in going there to find out about whether the computers are available or how I get service." And yet, it didn't take them long to overcome that initial reaction and go, wow, now I can get both the social and the stuff that I need for school in one place. And so that's in higher education, though, we have this cultural background of the exchange of information. It's a great place to kind of foster ideas, and there's kind of limitless boundaries in the sharing of knowledge. So we don't necessarily have the same corporate lockdown policies there that you might see in an enterprise. So while some organizations are locking it down, others are actually using it to help them hire people. They'll go up and search for people's names to see if they're out partying with someone and drinking beer or something. So we can't have the best of both worlds. We have to figure out a way to manage this until the technology catches up with it that enables the corporation to better manage the control or manage the access to this. And I don't mean lock it down, I mean leverage it. Social policy is really the only thing that's going to bridge the gap. We hire people, we tell them, you represent the company. That means it's not just in public, but it's when you're online and when you're emailing. You're part of our company now, and you need to just know that you represent us. So the social policy behind this is incredibly important. It's going to help us bridge the gap. Now that kind of brings us into the next area of discussion, which is really how do we better integrate with the business. And this is a quote from Gartner. Fewer than 1% of service providers currently use service dependency mapping, and this is startling to me. I mean, for 10 years now I've been talking about the importance of understanding your products and services. How can you build a company if you don't know what services you're providing? And yet we build IT organizations and we don't have a clue. And so the fact that only 1% currently use this service mapping, that's kind of a scary type of a metric in my mind. And when we talk about mapping, we're not just talking about inventorying the services that we offer, but understanding and integrating it back to the business process. So that if I change a hub over here, I know exactly what business processes are going to be impacted and how that's going to impact the business. It's not just about bringing services down, but who are the consumers, what are their business processes, and is this the appropriate time to be making changes? So that business service mapping is incredibly important for us to be able to create that value proposition. Without it, right, we're kind of missing the boat there. We really, why are we here? I mean, do we have any way to justify what we do? The service catalog is incredibly important, and then using that information to make better decisions is even more important in where we need to move to. Now here's the ITIL view of service mapping, and you can see at the very top we're dealing with the business processes and then the services that they're using and looking at the way that it interfaces with the infrastructure. This is what I mean by a service map. It's not just about IT, it's also about bringing in the suppliers into that view, the service level agreements, the requirements. We need a better understanding about what the business and how the business is using the IT services that we provide, not just what services we provide. Along with that, we have to be able to use that knowledge in the decision making that we make. And this is what naturally lends itself to the next topic of the new knowledge management. Along with Web 2.0, we have an unlimited number of opportunities to share information that we've never done before. If you look at just the concept of Wikipedia, with its pluses, its minuses, and its weaknesses, it's still a collaborative effort by a much larger organization. And anytime you have collective learning, you have a much greater power of that knowledge that you're creating. Now, obviously, controls to make certain that that knowledge is accurate have to be there, and we know that. But think about the power of creating that type of information share internally. I go back to the example of using Blackboard, opening up the world of allowing instructors to share information while they're using that tool about how they're using it in their business process. You know, bring it on. We need to facilitate that more because they can solve the issues of how you use technology to support that business process because they're doing it, they're living it, and they like to share that information. Versus us trying to become knowledgeable about how the business uses our services so that we can help them. The gap is still there. So offering up these abilities to create collaborative workspaces is incredibly important, and it's someplace that we need to get to now, not something that we need to think about for the future. So, you know, Enterprise 2.0 is what they've deemed this term of technologies and business practices that now enable, you know, much more productive communication and productivity, you know, within the enterprise. And we need to be able to enable this collective intelligence within our environment. Now, here's a great picture, and this comes from the Consortium for Service Innovation. And it's basically the funnel to the cloud. And 3 years ago when I put this slide up and I was talking to students about knowledge management, and I talked about how we create a funnel to manage the issues that our customers come to us in order to use their technology. You know, the funnel is the three levels. We have level 1 at the service desk, level 2 is distributed out into our technical groups, level 3 is development and engineering. We build these funnels because it costs so much to support, so it's the least expensive way for us to do that. But once we begin capturing the knowledge within that funnel and make that knowledge base available to the consumers, we see that they use that knowledge 3 times more than they ever called us about. And when we add in community there, where they're going out and they're interfacing with other people in the community to help solve a lot of times this multi-vendor type support, like how do I solve it in my environment using product X, Y, and Z, then we see the collective knowledge coming from assisted self-service and community is this huge, powerful knowledge base. Okay, it sounds great. Let's do it now. But here's the problem. 3 years ago, when I talked about this, I was talking about let's just start doing self-help. I mean, it'd be great. Let's get this knowledge and begin giving it to our customers. The problem is our customers couldn't wait. They got tired of waiting for us to create the ability to serve themselves, and they've skipped us and gone out to the community. If I could have everybody raise their hands, I'd love to see how many of you, when you get an error message today, go to Google before you first pick up the phone. It's easy. You don't have to deal with anybody. You usually get a pretty quick response. You're pretty knowledgeable about how to resolve it, and you're up and running again. So the idea that we somehow have got to begin capturing knowledge, we are so far behind the curve here. Our customers have bypassed us and have gone out into these communities and begun using their social networks to begin solving the issues that they may be having. A great example of this, when I hired my son to work for me, and when I would ask him a question on how to support something, I didn't hire him. I hired him and his 12 closest friends. Because if he can't solve it, he immediately texts someone else and says, hey, have you ever heard of this? And collectively they solve it. I mean, wow, that's pretty cheap to get 12 employees for the cost of one. So this idea of knowledge share in the community is just fabulous. But where are we internally, and why haven't we been able to create these communities internally? I think it would have gone a long ways if 3 years ago we could have built these communities internally so that our customers became familiar with using these methods in order to get faster response times, get the right answer, serve themselves, and have it done effectively. Then we could have kept, their focus and their attention on the value that we can provide in IT. Right now we've got a big gap to cover. Moving from assisted support and trying to somehow bridge the gap out into the community is going to be very tough for us to do, but we're behind the curve here. And what we're talking about now is looking at the way in which information flows, the different ways in which our customers are getting information. It's no longer just voice, calling, picking up the phone, or sending an email. We have IMs. There's, most of the websites that I go to now, there's a pop-up window that says, hey, you having troubles? Want to chat with somebody? And I'm like, go away. But they're there. And I can imagine people who are not as technology literate will go, oh, sure, and type something in and see how quickly they get a response. So, text messaging, blogs, wikis, we have this new information flow. And so today, we're struggling with just capturing knowledge via the phone and through email. How in the world do we capture knowledge through all of these other vehicles? But yet that represents a huge amount of valuable information about the way that we can change our services, the way that we can better enable the business, and we're not there yet. We're not capturing this knowledge. So we're going to be missing a lot of the valuable nuggets that will go into reinvention of the service provider. So business analytics, the business has been all about analytics, and we've heard about BI all over the place. It's not like this is uncommon. But within ITIL, the view of the importance of knowledge to support good strategic decision-making about where we position our resources and capabilities is vital to the success of the life cycle. We can't possibly do the whole thing. It just isn't going to happen. It's too costly. It may take us too long to get there. We never really have a lot of value in doing the whole thing. But we need to use what's the most valuable, and it needs to be data-driven. For us to provide the best value to put our efforts in the areas that are going to support the business, we need that information. We need to get it from the business processes and integrate it into the decisions we make in IT. Here's where we're going to uncover all the business opportunities and drive improvements at all levels within the organization. So if we're not capturing it, we can't use it. And so Part of the reason why we're not able to create greater value for the business is we don't have good sets of knowledge that we can leverage in order to support decisions about where we want to go. Remember, only 1% of organizations have service mapping. If we can't map our services, what are we doing with all the data that's being captured on those services? So, this is kind of I look at this and I think to myself, why are we where we are today? And I see all these driving trends and things that are happening within the industry that are kind of saying, you know what, if the service organization can't change, we're going to bypass you. And unfortunately, some of these trends are showing the way in which consumers are bypassing IT in order to get the level of service to interact on the way that they want to interact. And we've got to somehow bridge the gap between where we are today and where we need to be. Now, again, here's another picture from the ITIL framework. It shows us the 4 layers of the service knowledge management system, and at the data level, at the very bottom, we have all these repositories. Everybody's collecting data, and it's spread out, it's distributed. We lack the ability to integrate that in order to say, okay, I need to make a decision, but I need data from here, and I need data from there, and another data set over there, and I need it in real time. When we integrate that, that's when we get the context of, what's going on so that we can better analyze it by processing that information to support the decision making. So we've got the data. We don't lack data. We lack this ability to integrate it to support the decision making. And that's really where we start thinking about this concept of getting knowledge into the hands of the people to make the decisions on where to move, where to position ourselves, where to focus our efforts. Now, how does this change the skills of the service organization? I'll be honest with you. We're really seeing a dynamic change, and I think this is one of the reasons why we're seeing the drop in technical people seeking to get technical computer science degrees. If we look at this, we're now valuing business skills, and technical certifications are not, I can't remember the last time I heard someone say to me, do you have an A+ certification? It's not necessarily something we're coveting. We want to see how well you can interact with the business. People need to understand business goals, what the objectives are, and understand how we can leverage technology to meet those goals. We need to know our customers, and we need to know our customers' customers. That enables us to create greater value when we're answering the phone and providing support. We need to enhance our value proposition and prevent the dangerous dissatisfaction. If they can go to Google and get an answer quicker than they can than calling us or interfacing with us, there's where we hit dangerous dissatisfaction. They're wondering, why can't we be agile? Why can't we provide the service and the information that we need? Everything in business runs on IT today. It should just work, and that's what they expect. Like the dry cleaners. You drop off your clothes on Monday, you pick them up on Wednesday, they're clean, you pay, you go home. You can put them on right away. It's technology as a service. That's where we're moving to. We need to handle every interaction in a positive, professional, courteous, and effective manner. That's not going to change. But we need to constantly view every interaction with the ability to extract information from that customer's head and look at the way that we can use that to improve our services and our products. Taking ownership and initiative for every single customer interaction that we have. So the skills are no longer technical and customer service. They're skills in business, interpersonal, process, which is incredibly important to know how the business processes work so that we can support those processes, and then technical. We can't get away from that, but the priority in which we look at those skill sets is beginning to change. Now, none of you are probably on this call don't understand the dynamics of the wave of mobile computing and the way the devices continue to get smaller and smaller and they're much more powerful. But I think this statistic is amazing to me. A growing number of consumers' first and only experience of the World Wide Web will be on a mobile device. For me, that's baffling. I've had technology, since 1982 in my home where I've been using computers to do things. I can't imagine not having had an internet experience up till now. But the cost of the devices has come down. The cost of the service running on the devices has come down. and the ability to converge all of the different ways in which we want to interact on one small device. I don't have to lug around a computer and a power cord and an internet connection. I've got it all in the palm of my hand. The wave of mobile computing is more like a tsunami. I mean, this is huge, and it's going to impact the way that we interface with our end consumers. They don't want to lug around the big devices. They want computing to be easy. They want it to be simple. They want it to be light. They want it to be agile. And so we're still struggling with being able to provide BlackBerry support at the service desk. We have got to somehow be able to leverage this and enable our end users to be agile, to really leverage this technology to enable the business processes to be that much more successful. Now, here's the stat that I was talking about earlier when I talk about how data is growing. If you notice, it's beginning to take larger and larger and larger portions of the bandwidth that are going over the wireless industry networks. I have to imagine that the predictions for 2011 might actually be a little light. We may actually see a lot more happening in 2011. And I think this is primarily happening from the one price plan. Any network, any data, whatever you want, $69.99, you get it all. And so I can't imagine up till now pricing schemes and everything have put constraints on the way that we use technology in the mobile market. That's going away. We're just going to see astronomical leaps in the way that data is being exchanged over these mobile networks. So this is kind of tongue-in-cheek. Please take this. I've got a big smile on my face while I'm talking about this. But we've all heard of Moore's Law, right? The number of transistors that can be placed inexpensively on a circuit doubles approximately every 2 years. Well, now we have Moore's Law with an H. And, this is a no-brainer. We, as an IT service provider, have to keep pace with the way in which consumers are adopting technology. If the technology is doubling in power and capability every 2 years and we're still running Windows 95, we've got issues, right? We need to think about the way in which we are agile. And the more constraints, the more we lock down, the more we try to kind of face risk head on and kind of constrain the way that our users use IT systems. They are now doing it more aggressively in their personal lives, and they're knocking at the door and they're saying, I want this at work. Why is it so hard to do business with the service provider? So when we think about technology and the rapid pace of technology, the face of the service provider has to keep up. We need to be thinking about the way in which consumers are going to be using computers next year and beginning to adopt a vehicle to make it easier for the consumers to use that technology, to tap into it, and be able to leverage that power within their business processes. I mean, it's just inevitable. Last year we have green computing, and our impact on the planet from a technology perspective has just been huge, right? I myself have been, I can't get rid of a computer. I have 6 kids, so I can pass them down, to the point where they've got Windows 95 running on something in the house, I'm sure. But that's just not the case. We get rid of the technology, and it's going into the landfills. Everything around technology has a huge impact on our environment. So when we talk about establishing a green platform for IT, we're talking about using technology in a way that's smart, right? We don't necessarily have to invest in the best technology. We have to invest in technology that will last, but technology that will allow us to economically use these resources, through their logical lifetime. But there are other ways other than just looking at computer assets. There are things like telecommuting, which is really becoming a big a trend, especially here in California. I look at virtual meetings and conferences and training. We're in a virtual conference today. I think this is great. We're not really, polluting the air, driving somewhere, or flying somewhere. Leveraging e-learning. I am an educator. I look at what I do. I'm in IT. I try to enable organizations to better understand how to position IT in order to create greater value. And through that, a lot of what I do is training. And so the e-learning platform is hugely powerful. I create better learning experiences online than I'm able to do in the classroom because I can do it on a piecemeal basis. Students can learn the information, go back into their environments, and apply it and see real results before they come back in for their next lesson. So e-learning is a great way to help minimize the way in which we are impacting the environment because we have to stay current on our skills or we will be and continue to be overrun by our consumers. And we also need to be making these decisions on good cost-based analysis. And again, that goes back to that service knowledge management system in enabling good decision-making. Which configuration items in our environment have the smallest footprint, require the less maintenance, run the longest without failure? Those are the types of investments that we can make that are going to have a less impact on our environment in the future. So we need to serve our customers smarter, and Green IT is an excellent way for us to do that. We can serve our customers and grow our market share by being an innovator in this space. I firmly believe that California has done a lot. I mean, they have green summits and everything else where they're really trying to encourage smart use of technology, minimizing the impact on the environment. And I think this is a great way for us to build back a relationship with our consumers and become proactive about the way in which we leverage technology. So the bottom line here is that I'm not predicting the future. What I'm doing is showing you a lot of things that are happening in our current marketplace today, and I'm saying, what are we going to do today to prepare ourselves for tomorrow? Because we're being kind of sidestepped. Our consumers are interacting with technology in ways that we never viewed that they would or that we can no longer ever control. I mean, you know, putting controls and lockdowns on the way that consumers use technology is a recipe for failure. So when we think about moving into the future, we need to think of ways to leverage social computing. We have to understand this wave of mobile computing and, you know, how we can leverage this and make it more successful. We need to embrace collaborative tools, both in IT and the workspace, begin understanding our knowledge flow so we can capture this information and use it, and we need to lead the awareness of ways in which we can strategically use IT. So we are running up here on our time for stopping. I'm going to real quick see if there are any questions in here. I have no questions, so I guess I can assume that that's just I did such an awesome job that you guys have no questions. You know, if you have something, we have, I think, 1 minute and 10 seconds left here for our presentation. If you want to type something in. My understanding is if you do have questions and you put them in, here's my contact information. If you want a copy of the slides or you want to contact me to talk more about this or connect with me, I have, you know, my Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm moving into that social networking realm and adopting and adapting as quickly as I possibly can. So I just want to thank all of you for attending today and for doing it virtually because it fits right in with the virtual computing and green computing. Best wishes to all of you, and hope to hear back from you again soon. Oh, good, we have a question. Let's see here. What do you recommend organizations do as the first step to move towards service management? You know, I'll be real honest with you. I think today we're doing more in the realm of service management than we think we are. You know, when I begin working with an organization about service management, the first thing that they become very aware of is, you know what, we do a lot of this stuff.